Carla, my ex-stepdaughter, is 27 years old. Vanessa, her mom, and I made the decision to separate 2 years ago after 23 years together. The breakup was an extremely difficult moment. By the time we were both in our early 40s, I realized that I had relentlessly pursued her emotional needs. However, Vanessa seemed oblivious to how my needs for romantic intimacy went unanswered. Eventually, I initiated divorce proceedings. In response, Vanessa accused me of infidelity. Communicating with Carla became an uneasy process, as if we were mere acquaintances rather than part of the same family with whom I could share dinner. Our family with Vanessa has 2 children in common, each of whom is now 18 years old. I remarried recently, and my current wife has a young son who is still attending preschool. As of late, we have rejoiced at the news of an imminent addition to our newly formed family. This sense of newfound harmony at home has been a revelation to me. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly satisfied with family life without feeling the need to seek to replace something missing or strive to avoid feeling empty. However, as the birth of a new family member approached and against the backdrop of our small-town living, a Cold War-like tension developed between Carla and me. Although both of us recognize that the initiative to communicate can come from both sides, I feel it is not appropriate to make contact with Carla, who is clearly upset. Her frustration stems in part from the situation of my current wife's sister, Ellie, 28. Ellie is known for her work at a gas station and is having difficulty finding another job due to her lack of education. I had previously discussed with Carla the possibility of an unpaid internship with my real estate company given her postgraduate training, but the divorce scuttled those plans. Ellie, a member of our church choir, has repeatedly expressed her desire to leave the retail industry. She is convinced she is not cut out to serve customers who think they are better than she is. I did not have a high school education, yet my income is currently $70,000 a year plus annual bonuses. This shows that the lack of a diploma does not become a barrier to financial success. Carla expressed her displeasure by emphasizing how much she disliked the distance between us. Our conflict came as a complete surprise to me, as this was the first time since my divorce that I had been asked a lot of questions and felt like I was doing everything wrong. In order to organize my assets to fit my current living situation, I had a consultation with an attorney. He explained that there is no legal requirement to include an adult biological child in a will, let alone a former stepdaughter. However, if I was determined to prevent any possible attempt by Carla to contest the will, I could do so. I ended up making a will naming my current wife, stepson, and biological children. Think about it out loud. Refusing to be associated with your daughter and ex-wife was your own decision. That being said, society in the United States has no right to judge you. However, it appears that you made the decision to exclude Carla from the will, but you also included a stepson. That decision raises questions. After all, you have cared for her for 23 years, but now that does not seem to matter to you. I find it difficult to understand your position. You don't seem to feel any regret for the decision to cut off contact with the daughter you raised. I realized you had made a mistake when I learned of your intention to exclude from your will the stepdaughter you raised from her age 2 to 25. It is hard to imagine that you can raise a child for so many years and not consider them a part of your life. It reminds me of the famous line from the movie Shameless, "You divorce spouses, not children." It's strange to hear the phrase former stepdaughter and claims of fulfillment. You raised this child for most of her life, and after the divorce, you began to question the appropriateness of maintaining the relationship. You cut off communication with her and refused to offer her an unpaid internship at your office. When she expressed displeasure at your estrangement, you contemplated disinheriting her through legal mechanisms. You see a future in your second family when you are in your late 40s or 50s. The hope that a new child will add spice to your personal life seems promising to you. This is exactly what I was thinking, given your divorce from your previous wife for reasons of lack of intimacy and romance. Now, with another child, you may be considering updating your will to exclude your current wife and her children, given the likelihood of a future divorce. Next story. I live in a house in an inexpensive town in England. I moved here during the global crisis, initially intended as a temporary measure. However, I liked it so much that I decided to stay here permanently once the situation stabilizes. Previously, my home was in London, where I had a 3-bedroom apartment with a private bath and an office. Now my accommodation I share with two women who are about my age. My share of the rent is higher because of the larger space I occupy. My female roommates are pleasant people. Although we are not best friends, we spend time watching TV together and occasionally have a hangout outside the house. Recently, there has been some anxiety. One of my housemates accidentally opened an envelope addressed to me from my employer that contained information about a pay raise and bonuses. She claims it was an accident, explaining that our correspondence looked similar. The problem is that she now knows the amount of my income, which is considered high by London standards and even more so for the region where we live. Her behavior changed after that, first becoming aloof and then hostile. It culminated when, after my reminder to pay for a shared dinner, she accused me of greed via a voicemail message in a WhatsApp group, calling me a greedy Southerner. This was odd, as we had never practiced this kind of reciprocity, and there was no reason to change our approach in this situation. My third roommate began avoiding open conversations with me, although I suspect they were discussing me behind my back. They organized a meeting of all the tenants of the apartment, at which they hinted to me that my behavior was inappropriate. They were particularly angered by my demand for a refund of £2,020, arguing that I was able to do without the money. The situation escalated to the point where they accused me of hypocrisy and pretending to be one of them, even though I could afford to live separately. They argued that in the current economic climate it was fair that I was paying more because of my higher income. I objected, noting that I was not responsible for their choice of lower-paying professions. Working as a teacher and a nurse, I already contribute a much larger share of the rent, with our housing being among the expensive ones. I refused to accept blame for their financial situation, noting that I did not feel guilty that my life had turned out better. This conflict led to my estrangement from my neighbors, but I don't think I did wrong. You are not wrong in your feelings, but considering the option of moving may be a wise decision. Your surroundings seem to be experiencing envy. Reminds me of a story about a former roommate of mine who became less open after he found out about me going to university on a scholarship. While that didn't exempt me from student loans, I still tried to be frugal. Like you, there were people around me who did not consider it their duty to claim my funds. Thanks to the kindness of friends who sometimes paid for entertainment so we could spend time together, I was able to enjoy socializing even when my own funds were limited. I always tried to cover my expenses when possible and pay back my debts. If someone owes you a debt and does not see fit to pay it back, it is an indicator of disrespect. In such cases, the friendship should be reconsidered. The situation does not appear to be inclined to improve. Given that you have the means to move, it may be worth considering it for the sake of your own peace of mind. The desire to live among people is reason enough to live together, regardless of income level. That said, it seems that this arrangement has exhausted itself. You have rightly pointed out the common problems of rent sharing and other financial issues. However, your comment regarding career choices by others was overly personal. Next time, you should focus on discussing the financial aspects of living in a house without going into unnecessary detail. Now I want to tell a different story. For more than 10 years, my husband and I have been living together. During this period, he has periodically sought psychotherapeutic help, finding it difficult to find a suitable specialist. Some of the therapists immediately offered him treatment without regular meetings, and one of them tried to impose his religious views on him. None of the approaches had the desired result. He needed a therapist who could meet with him on a regular but not too frequent basis without trying to impose his beliefs, but focused on developing effective strategies and discussing his problems. When he shared with me about questionable advice from his therapists, such as the need to just love Jesus, I insisted on finding a more appropriate therapist and urged him to take his time until he found the right one. At times, he was left without therapeutic help. Because of his inability to take care of himself, additional responsibilities were shifted to me. I had to remind him to pay attention to his health, drink enough water, and eat regularly. I literally had to remind him of simple things like brushing his teeth. His lack of confidence in making decisions also meant that I had to help him choose his clothes, compose emails to colleagues and friends, and plan our activities together. I became the initiator of all our plans, sometimes even allowing him to claim that he made them. Despite his kindness and love for me, his addiction became a source of fatigue. I spent at least an hour every week discussing another life crisis with him, which sometimes ended up in conversations about buying new items for a collection I had absolutely no interest in. Eventually, I insisted that he start seeing a therapist again. I explained to him that I could not replace a professional and that he needed to learn how to take care of himself and develop the necessary skills under the guidance of a therapist. He followed my advice and the results were impressive. However, after a month of therapy, he informed me that the therapist suggested a homework assignment for me as well. I was asked to make a list of all of his outstanding traits, expanding to 1 or 2 pages. This requirement came after years of taking on much of his emotional difficulties, supporting him, and recognizing the efforts I was making for his well-being. One year, I even created a list of 100 of his best qualities as a gift. However, when I was asked to do a similar task again, I felt disappointed and declined, stating that therapy should be his own task, not mine. I had spent too much time solving his problems for him during our life together and felt it was unfair that I was expected to do my homework when the goal of his therapy was to develop personal skills without constant dependence on me. He accepted my rejection with understanding, although he was distressed. Recently, he expressed his frustration to me, claiming that I supposedly did not appreciate his therapist and that I should be more grateful and express appreciation. I made it clear that I didn't care about his therapist's opinion. It made me wonder if I was really doing the wrong thing by refusing to do the homework suggested by his therapist. Don't think you are a fool, but perhaps you should seek help from a therapist too. Your efforts are 99% of your contribution to this relationship, which appears to be completely draining you. The question arises as to why you continue to be in such a union and what you get out of it. Things like wanting to always help and codependency need attention. While he is indeed a good man and loves you, love alone may not be enough to create a healthy and supportive relationship. It sounds like your husband is choosing therapists who are not highly trusted, judging by their low ratings. If the therapist feels your involvement in the treatment process is necessary, he or she should arrange to meet with you or suggest that you join your husband's session. It is extremely unprofessional of a therapist to give a client their personal opinion of their spouse. In this situation, if my partner had informed me of his therapist's dislike of me, my reaction would have been calm. I would have offered, "Okay, then maybe we should get a divorce and you should go to a friend's house or stay in a hotel for a while." I might even call the therapist to clarify the situation, but my response would depend on my state and level of irritation. Perhaps this therapist really doesn't meet professional standards, or your husband is creating an unrealistic image of the situation. My next story. Her friend's cat, Juno, was of considerable size, exceeding standard perceptions. Despite not belonging to a large breed, she resembled a real tank. The friend was always sensitive to comments about Juno's weight, assuring that the cat was perfectly fine. The situation changed when a friend had to travel to Europe for work for a year. She asked me to take care of Juno. Before leaving, my friend gave me detailed instructions on how to take care of Juno, specifying that the cat should be given free access to dry food. Despite my concerns about Juno's weight, my friend insisted that this condition be met. After a week of looking after Juno, it became apparent that her weight was seriously affecting her quality of life. Juno could barely jump up on the couch. I decided to change Juno's diet by switching to wet food twice a day. Although adapting to the new diet was difficult, the results were immediate. 8 months of strict dieting resulted in Juno losing weight and now weighs 14 pounds. Her activity and mobility have improved markedly. Even her breathing has gotten better. My friend saw the changes in the photos of Juno that I was sending and was upset about the changes made without her consent, despite her initial agreement to allow the cat free access to food. I explained to my friend that I could not go back to the previous way of feeding, believing it would amount to neglect given Juno's improved condition. The friend tried to find someone else to care for Juno for the remaining 4 months, but was unsuccessful. She expressed her displeasure and suggested that our companionship would end upon her return to the US. This decision brought me pain, but I made it, realizing that I had broken a promise I had made to my friend. Despite the situation and the distance, I do not feel that I did morally wrong in caring for Juno's health. Reflecting on the situation, I wondered how others would have reacted if the situation had been reversed and Juno needed to gain weight rather than lose it. The accusations against Juno's caretaker were harsh, but it is important to emphasize that caring for an animal entails being attentive to its health and well-being. Neither starving nor overfeeding to the point of obesity can be considered caring. If Juno is still thin after almost a year, It is obvious that her weight was previously significantly above normal. Worries about the cat's future when returned to the original owner are understandable, but it was important to focus on Juno's health at this time. The guardian rightly expressed concern for Juno's health, noting that a veterinarian should be consulted for any changes to the animal's diet. This was the approach that was taken, to start by reducing the usual amount of food by 10%. This point emphasizes the importance of professional opinion in caring for an animal. Comparing cat care to the hypothetical case of child care, prescribing excessive consumption of junk food emphasizes the absurdity of unconditionally following any instructions that ignore health and well-being. The importance of moderation and a balanced approach to nutrition is relevant to both humans and animals. Juno's guardian sought to find a middle ground, following the veterinarian's recommendations and his own understanding of caring for the animal's health. The responsibility for the cat's welfare fell on his shoulders, and he took what he thought was the best course of action in this situation, based on professional advice and his personal concern for Juno. A story that really surprised me. In August this year, I became a mom. In our country, parents are granted up to 1.5 years of childcare leave. Many people choose not to use all of these days at once, leaving the opportunity to spend time at home with a growing baby as needed. I, on the other hand, intend to spend each of those days at home until my son reaches preschool age. This was a conscious choice on my part, despite realizing that we would have to limit ourselves in many aspects of life, such as eating, dressing, or traveling. However, the opportunity to be around my son is priceless to me. We attend open daycare every Saturday, which has become our tradition. It is a place where parents, along with their children, can spend a few hours playing and socializing. This is where I met a mom who shared her bitterness over having to return to work early after the birth of her daughter. Her story of stress and sadness over being separated from her baby made me sympathetic, as she expressed her desire to spend as much time with her child as I did. During our conversation, I tried to share advice on how possible it is to stay at home while saving on personal expenses. My advice, offered with the best of intentions, was not received as I expected, causing tension in our communication. The situation worsened when one of the daycare organizers stressed the importance of kindness and respect in our communication, reminding me of the possible consequences for the atmosphere in the daycare. This experience made me think about the complexity of interpersonal relationships and the importance of subtlety in communication, especially in sensitive issues such as parenting. Criticizing or misunderstanding someone else's financial circumstances without fully understanding their situation can lead to unnecessary conflict and misunderstandings. Having a spouse does not guarantee the financial ability for a family to make do without two incomes. Each person faces their own set of financial and life circumstances, which may include mortgage obligations, support from other family members, and the need for job stability and security. Spending on personal pleasures such as dyeing your hair or buying clothes may seem excessive, but they are not always comparable to the full amount of family expenses needed to sustain it. Instead of criticizing, consider being grateful that you are fortunate enough to be in a position where making changes to your budget can have a significant impact on your life. Realizing that each of us is in a unique financial and life situation can foster more participative and understanding communication. It is important to seek support and understanding rather than litigation and evaluation, especially in matters that require a deep understanding of the personal circumstances of others.